Good day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan battle video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at how you can get 6,000 points in the burst mode without needing an LR cooler and basically with relative ease. Well, pretty much super easy, to be honest with you. So basically, it's important to manage your modifiers whenever you're doing burst mode and to understand what you need to have selected and what you don't need to have selected. So we're going with Space Traveling Warriors. It is a bit easier to do just due to the fact that there are a decent number of leads. The friend lead you'll be taking will do a lot of the work, and there's a decent selection of free-to-play units. So you're going to tick most of these. Super attack ceiling will definitely be on. You want to tick off any attack buffs pretty much, except for one of them, and the reason why is although attack buffs are worth a lot of points, you can easily get over 6,000 without activating a single one, and the attack buffs are really what makes the stage super hard. The defense buffs make it just long and unbearable, but we're going to try and counter that with our friend selection. The rest of the stuff you pick as standard. Damage reduction from all the typings except for strength, because that's the only typing we're going to be using. None of the attack buffs, which are worth very low points. I'd love to point out here that you can select the 250% attack buff for 680 points or just a 50% one for 600 points. You can start to see kind of what I'm intimating here. You don't need to go really crazy with it. You can quite easily access most of these things quite simply. And then also, if you want to add more challenge, you can add locking out your characters, you can add key reduction, but generally speaking, it's not needed. The goal here is to get over 6,000 points, and this is fairly achievable with relative ease. In terms of the team selection, pretty solid choices. A couple of free-to-play units in there, the Prime Battle Freezer, the free-to-play Jace. In terms of your selection for Space Traveling Warriors, you have a decent kind of selection. Obviously, one thing you do have to be aware of is the friend lead we're taking is a cooler. So we're taking the LR cooler because he is a Terrifying Conqueror's lead and because he's a Transformation Boost lead, and he does huge damage. Now you don't need a cooler of your own. You don't even need a transforming cooler of your own. You can actually run this under the Prime Battle Freezer's leader skill. That's just how, because the attack stats haven't gone up. Like, the attack stats have gone up at most 50% from a normal Dokkan event. It's just that the damage that you need to do, it needs to be very high. And that's kind of the only real significant issue that you can run into. Beyond that though, everything is pretty stock standard and pretty straightforward. As I mentioned before, this is more a grind through just doing the turns than anything else. The actual event itself is not distinctly difficult. A lot of your progress, or the speed of your progress, relies a lot on whether cooler crits or not, as we've given the enemy significant damage reduction and significant defenses. We've also increased their health significantly, and so it's going to take a while. We've also added the ability for them to basically nullify any attack stat below a certain threshold. So in general, that is kind of what we're dealing with. We've augmented the defense of the enemy very substantially, and we haven't affected their offense in any significant way. And this is what makes managing your modifiers to give yourself the most appropriate burst mode for your kit that you can. Because not everyone's got, full power freezer, not everyone's got Turles rainbowed, not everyone's got LR cooler rainbowed, not everyone's got Boujack, not everyone's got a lot of these super crucial units that you see for people that are running teams that clear 6,500 or 6,200. And so realistically speaking, to kind of self-manage this, what you really want to do is you want to try and manifest the modifiers that are easiest to clear. And defense, as much as it's annoying, doesn't make the event distinctively harder, because most units that are Dokkan Awakened can very easily handle a Dokkan level event now. Absolutely none of our units are ever at a risk of getting us killed, even if they don't get the most orbs or don't get a super attack. Yes, there will be cases where we maybe take some damage, but it's very few and far between. So realistically speaking, that's how I think it's best to manage this burst mode if you don't have the correct particular units. Take it low and slow and just grind your way through it. It's honestly really not too hard. The LR Cooler carries all the damage. You're just going to take a couple turns. Pop on an anime and just literally cycle through the turns and let it go. It's really that simple. There's honestly not too much here. You don't need the Rakuman Gildo, by the way. You can replace them with whatever you want. Personally speaking, what I would do is, if you're someone who can, maybe look at running the Strength Boujack as your lead. That gives you a little bit more access to units overall. But personally, I do think Cooler's the best, just because of his damage output. Like I said, you can be on a 90% lead under Prime Battle Frieza and you're more than fine defensively. The real thing is your damage output, and Cooler, the one nice thing about him, especially a rainbow one that's built properly, will fire off like 4 attacks that can all crit. And the importance of critting is that it nullifies a lot of the defensive factors of the opposition. So it's very, very important. When you get to this AoE phase, because the enemies don't do damage, it's not a problem. But of course, again, try to prioritize at least one of the units that you have type advantage against. Obviously, we're running a full strength team, so we should realistically be trying to take out the physical unit as quickly as possible. And that's basically it. Honestly speaking, there's not much going on here beyond just grinding it out. Like, there's really not anything you need to do. There's no significant components to this. There's no secret strategy. All you have to do is just run your team, and eventually you'll whittle down the opposition. Now, obviously, depending on your units and depending on your leader skill, the time will vary. And that's the biggest differentiating factor between a player with good units and a player with bad units. But either way, the team functions more than fine. Personally speaking, I think there's plenty enough options to make things work under the Terrifying Conqueror's lead. You have Final Form Frieza, the Strength one. You still have a unit like Super Hearts. You still have Strength Nappa, that's an option. The Turles LR, the Boujack LR, Full Power Frieza LR. There's plenty of decent options, so there's nothing too crazy that you need to look out for. I think most people should have a decent enough selection of units. Like I said, there's at least 2 or 3 strong free-to-play units you can use here. The baby is from the World Tournament, so you should be malleable enough to make this work. It's just going to depend, entirely on your team's functionality and what you've got in the cooker. I will be doing a video on the Connected Hope category as well, and how to get 6,000 points there. But yeah, it's just important basically to understand at any given time where your difficulties lie. In terms of the AGL Boujack phase, this is where I used the active skill from Cooler, and there's a reason why. Again, it's just to do with damage. I really wanted to augment Cooler's damage. The AGL phase, we have full type disadvantage for a lot of our units, so maximizing the damage here is going to be able to allow me to basically do this event a lot faster, which does help out. But again, it's all down to Cooler's RNG. Will he crit? Will he not crit? It's just going to depend. But I think in general it's a pretty decent run, and I think for the most part players shouldn't have like a massive issue here. If you don't have any of the Coolers as lead or Boujack as lead and you haven't farmed Prime Battle Frieza, obviously it's going to be a problem for you. There's no doubt about that. So that is something you do need to be aware of. Fortunately, there is at least some sub Space Traveling Warriors leads in the form of Jace. But if you haven't farmed Jace, then you're not really going to be able to do this. And the strength version of the team is definitely the best team to do this event with, because of the fact that you have access to the LR Cooler, who's going to be a huge source of damage. Again, our issue is not defense. You're not concerned about any of your units dying at any given point. What you are concerned about is your DPS, because you don't want to sit here for 3 hours going to turn 400. I mean, you can, but you don't want to. That's the simple premise of it. And yeah, then finally, obviously, we're at the final phase for Boujack. And yeah, I just think in general it was a pretty as you can see, long run. We're well over 15 turns. It's a very long period of time to be running, especially a Dokkan event, but any event. You know, at this point, you've really reached the max kind of level of stacking for Cooler. So without crits, you do end up just running out of luck. And you can see here, like, we don't get luck on a lot of the initial 18 keys and things like that. But when Cooler does crit, he does chunk down the boss pretty hard. So you might have a very, very, very smooth time. You might have Cooler run through the bosses super quickly. You might crit on every attack. And fantastic. I really hope that happens, because this was hella long. But yeah, beyond Cooler, no one else really does damage. My transforming Cooler is at 55%, so he has very minimal crit from his hidden potential system. And yeah, that is basically it. There's not too much else I think I need to mention. I think most players should be fine with this. If you're not, the Connected Hope team is a bit different. Hopefully you'll be able to build that. The goal is to get 6,000, because the missions that you get for burst mode, the top score there to get all the missions completed is 6,000. So you do want to complete all the missions and obviously get your hands on all of the rewards, and I assume that means you will get the max amount of coins if you get 6,000. So yeah, obviously, yeah, that's kind of the premise behind it. I think for me, personally speaking, burst mode's a lot of fun. It's fun to kind of tinker with the modifiers to get something that works really well for the general person. But at the same time, it can be a little frustrating, especially if you're a newer player, or you're someone who doesn't maybe have the box or the access to the units. You tend to have a hard time. To each their own. I think personally speaking, it is what it is. But yeah, burst mode's a good addition. I enjoy it, so I'm not gonna knock it, and I think it's good to tinker around and find ways to get a high score without necessarily needing to have like a premier team or anything like that. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. Honestly, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out. Let me know if it does or if it doesn't. And yeah, let me know, you know, if you have any team suggestions or you have any tips for players. We have a little bit of wiggle room. So obviously we cleared, I think, 6,170. So if you want to, you can, or 670, there we go. So if you want to, you can maybe remove the damage reduction of 20%, etc., and just make it a little bit easier for yourself. But yeah, that's most of the missions done, everything but completing it with the Connected Hope team, obviously. So a very, very straightforward and very successful attempt here. So yeah, that's really, really good. And beyond that, there's nothing really else more for me to say. So of course, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will be doing a video on the Connected Hope team. That should be out tomorrow or so, depends on the scheduling of videos. But yeah, see you next time. Bye.